We have Jay Foran with Team Neo and Elaine Bryant with Jobs Ohio. And again, as John said, I'm Andy Resnick. I'm the Public Affairs and Communications Director with America Makes. I'm pretty excited about this panel that we have today. And I think, the work that Jay and Elaine are doing throughout Ohio to really advance additive manufacturing as a sector and an industry has really, I think, shown tremendous results, and as well as the job the entire state's doing. So I really wanted to hone this conversation, and it'll be just like a conversation, but we really wanted to hone this conversation on the work that the state's doing. What are some opportunities that we have here in Ohio? And what are some things that can be replicated around the country? I think, we look to state governments, especially in this political environment right now. State governments tend to be the innovators, the drivers, the ones that can have the most impact on the day-to-day life, or, the most impact day-to-day on industries. And because Ohio is our backyard, because we do so much here, we're seeing that impact in a very real way, with a lot of the organizations that we work with on a daily basis, including both of yours. There's a lot of organizations in this state that have a national reach and a national network, but really drive that local impact. So really wanted to just talk about some of those things, about what Ohio is doing right and what the opportunities are, and what the current state of play is. So with that in mind, just kind of to kick it off, if you guys don't mind, just kind of giving a little bit of background on your organizations and yourself and the work that you guys are doing throughout the state. Start with Elaine.
Okay, great. Thanks, Andy, and good to see you, Jay. Really excited to be here. Thanks to John and everyone at America Makes for inviting me to speak today. As Andy mentioned, Elaine Bryant, I'm with Jobs Ohio. I'm the managing director for the military and federal sector. I'm also dual hatted in the Dayton region as the executive vice president for aerospace and defense. I'm also a 20-year Air Force veteran, and it's really exciting for me to be in my Jobs Ohio role, and in this role in helping with the military missions across our state, and working with the industry partners and the nonprofits that make all of this happen. And by the way, kudos to Josh and everything that you all are doing on workforce. That was really amazing to see. So exciting piece there. So in 2020, Jobs Ohio stood up a 10th sector. So you all may be familiar. We have 9 sectors at Jobs Ohio. Additive advanced manufacturing is one of those. And I think one of my colleagues, Karthik, is on the call as well. And so we stood up the 10th sector because we saw the importance of the federal missions, both military and also at NASA, and the economic impact that had in the state of Ohio. And the goal was to make Ohio have Ohio be recognized as the top or number 1 state for military and federal missions, their members, families, and veterans. And so that's the charter that I have been working off of as part of this new sector with 2020. This sector is very much in line with the state's aerospace and defense strategy. Many of you probably know Colonel Retired Joe Zeeson, have probably heard his 4 pillars, which is the first is retention and expansion of those military and federal installations. So that's my focus area. Innovation, which is bringing together the research institutes across the state to continue to support all of those missions. Third is industry attraction. So glad to be on here with Jay. I know that is his core focus is not just the business attraction from outside the state, but also growing and expanding the right industry partners here locally, and then talent, which you guys knocked out of the park, so I won't go there. So what we did is we conducted an economic impact analysis this past year, looking at the Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Veteran Affairs, and NASA, analyzing the $22 billion that come into our state from those 4 agencies, and looking across the state. It's about a 5.5% total Ohio employment, and it represents a $39 billion economic impact and $69 billion gross output. So this really helped to solidify and get the data behind why we understand that these military and federal installations are so important. So how does this tie into advanced manufacturing and America Makes, and why this is all so important? Well, as I mentioned, one of our 9 sectors in Jobs Ohio is advanced manufacturing. I work closely with Glenn and Tim. I already mentioned Karthik. This is all very much cross-sector. Advanced manufacturing cuts across all of the sectors and all the work that we do. And when I look at my focus area in the defense realm and in the NASA realm, advanced manufacturing is going to be key to continuing to grow our economy and continuing to show Ohio's strength in maintaining those missions and taking care that we are providing the right ecosystems to sustain those missions and also to attract industry partners. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg a little bit. We want to have the industry partners and we want to use that to bring more missions, but we need more missions to bring more industry partners. But I think where we are as a state right now in collaboration, as I mentioned, with the governor's strategy on aerospace and defense, with this new sector and the work that we're doing with NASA, AFRL. I know I scrolled through the list of the names on this call, just a great group of folks. It's been just really exciting to see all the partnerships across the states. And before I turn it over to Jay real quick, I do want to give kudos to the state and again, to a lot of the people that are on this call, including the America Makes team, because in August of 2020, Ohio was designated as a defense manufacturing state. And that work is ongoing. It was a designation for our state, but it also came with a $5 million grant. And I know that there was matching from our MEPs and from our state. There's a lot of great work being done with small businesses and work with the team members on this call. And that's just really a sign to the Department of Defense. Hey, keep sending more missions to Ohio because we get it and we have the right ecosystem. And you guys are part of making that happen. So
that's a great point, Elaine. And I know I wanted to dive into that a little bit deeper because it was a big deal when it was announced last year. So we'll come back to that in a bit for sure.
Great.
Jay?
I think I'm next. Jay Foran. I'm Senior Vice President of Industry and Innovation at Team Northeast Ohio, also known more regularly as Team NEO. We are an organization similar to Jobs Ohio in that we are private and we're not for profit. We are, though, focused on the 18 counties of Northeast Ohio. It represents about 25% of the state geography, but about 40% of the output of the state. Why is that? Advanced manufacturing is at the core of everything we do. So my role, as Elaine outlined, there are 10 sectors that Jobs Ohio puts focus on and leans into in our state. And my job is on a local level to align with those strategies, to bring those strategies to life in the local market. And in doing that, we, in addition to trying to create new jobs and create more capital investment in the region, et cetera, we are also looking at ways to help our companies be more competitive globally so that they can be resilient, that they can advance their revenue and increase their profitability. And a few years back, call it 7, with the location of America Makes in our region, and the fact that the state was really focused in on additive manufacturing, we stood up a additive manufacturing cluster. So for us, what that meant is putting in place a roadmap, not a technology roadmap, but instead a commercialization roadmap. So the Youngstown Business Incubator, Magnet, Team NEO, with the help of a grant from the Fund for Our Economic Future, was able to put together the initial roadmap for how could we catalyze additive manufacturing in the region for our companies and to use it as an attraction agent as well. That roadmap served us well. The whole idea of the roadmap is really, what's the state of the opportunity? What assets do we have that give us a sense or the feeling that we can succeed in that particular, against that opportunity? What's the size of the prize for achieving it? And what do we still need to do in order to be successful? And again, as I said, that roadmap served us well. But here more recently in 2021, we started all over. We threw the old one out. We used, obviously carried over some of the information, but created the updated version of that roadmap. And what was important in our process and the methodology that we followed was that we leveraged the knowledge existing at Jobs Ohio. We brought together industry companies here in the region like Lubrizol, Parker Hannifin, Eaton Corporation. We brought together service providers. We brought together academia, materials companies, et cetera, all with the intent of putting together that roadmap. And here most recently, call it 4 months ago, we launched that roadmap. And what is great about it is that it's not a report. It starts out looking like a report, but embedded in there are 7 different initiatives that are intended to drive activity in the region so that we can continue to improve in the acceleration and adoption of 3D printing in the region, and use it again, as I said earlier, as an attraction agent, such that OEMs and material suppliers, et cetera, software organizations associated with 3D printing machines would look at our region as a attractive location to establish their operations. So we're well on our way, and
I appreciate the introductions from both of you, and actually kind of dive right into it, Jay. What you were talking about leads a little bit to that. One of the first questions I had is we have such tremendous assets in Ohio that both of you just talked about, right? In terms of our existing manufacturing base, in terms of our defensive infrastructure, in terms of coordination and collaboration amongst the regional partners in multiple regions around the state, which is something you don't see in a lot of states. A lot of times you get a lot of competing interest, right? And everybody kind of fighting for that same slice of the pie. But we seem to have a bit more of a coordinated approach. What is that next step in terms of taking that coordination, taking that roadmap, and then engaging with either the state government or local economic development partners to have that actually start to come to play and actually become something that goes from an idea into action?
So for the roadmap specifically, those 7 initiatives, we had about 35 people around the table on a regular basis over a 6-month period. And as we launched the roadmap, we quickly followed back with the formation of working groups, whereby some portion of those folks, as well as other folks that we drew to the table, sat down and identified action steps against each of those initiatives. And we have had a regular cadence of sessions whereby the working groups go off, do their thing, come on back, report back in, get feedback, etc. And the thought here is to keep moving those initiatives along such that we're making progress against them as best possible, and as well as integrating those efforts, right? So those initiatives can range from how do we build talent. So we've got a group of colleges and universities and others from industry that are working on that aspect, all the way to how do we promote our region globally as a center of excellence, starting off with our asset of America Makes, as well in our roadmap and other activities. So these things are different, but at the same time, the intent is to leverage the collective strength of those initiatives that help accelerate again the rate of adoption, and again put us on the global map as a center of excellence around this technology.
Elaine, I want to pivot back for a minute to the DMC designation and how important that was. Actually, at MMX last year around this time, we had the Lieutenant Governor on who spoke to that same point, how important it was. We didn't get into too much detail then, but I would love to take the opportunity here, especially with your expertise, to dive into that a little bit more. What does that mean, for Ohio manufacturing? And to be able to get into the defense supply chain and be able to have that access, and how does that differentiate Ohio from some of the other states around the country?
Absolutely. So yeah, it was a pretty exciting to get that designation. Now there are other entities within Ohio that have collaborated with others, and I know America Makes has also collaborated with other states to receive that designation. I share that just for complete context, but not to downplay the importance of it, knowing that other folks are participating. But the fact that we got it as a state, as I mentioned earlier, it really sends a clear signal that, just as you were saying earlier, Andy, we are coming together. We've got a strong group of teamworks. There is a lot of pie to go around, so we don't all have to fight over the same slice. And I think that when this opportunity was presented to us, and I was fairly new in my Jobs Ohio role, was able to reach out to AFRL, reach out to the folks, on base, different folks to say, hey, Ohio is going for this as a state, and your support in this would really mean a lot. And so I'm by no means the expert in, the Industry 4.0 and the actual, as I mentioned, about 26 projects that we'll be undertaking. Not an expert in that, but do feel that I was able to lend some help and expertise and support to helping people understand why this was so important. So the designation is kind of, we got our ribbon and we get to wear it. But the grant is really important. There's a lot of support out there, especially these days with the federal government and options for grants. And so, being able to bring in $5 million for the state of Ohio, where we could work with our MEPs and be able to collaborate and have some very specific projects. We just had Aaron Patrick, we had one of our leadership committee meetings for that community, and just to hear the updates, to see what everybody's doing, it's just really exciting. The signal that it sends to the Department of Defense is, as I mentioned earlier, we need to bring more mission here. We need to bring more industry. And so this is just another validation for the rich heritage in manufacturing that our state has, and that heritage is actually allowing us to propel into the future. So we're taking advantage of that. We're looking at, what is the next thing on the horizon? And so it's been really exciting to see the progress being made and all the work being done under that grant. And what I hope is that we are able to apply for additional grants, that this is just a stepping stone where this is a model for other grants that we can apply for, instead of as individual towns or individual organizations, but that we can apply for as a state. Those individual ones are important as well, but I think we are stronger, and a good balance of that with the statewide grant is important.
Jay, are you hearing in your conversations with some of the companies that are looking to come into Northeast Ohio, is this becoming a factor for them in terms of that environment that something like the DMC designation has, or at least the defense infrastructure that we have in the country, or at least, the defense infrastructure in the state? Is that playing a role in some of the companies that are looking to relocate here?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another feather in the cap of Ohio. I mean, again, you take the legacy, you take the position that we have in the military and federal segments. You have, the assets that we've been developing. We have America Makes. We have so many aspects that, and we have, cost of operations that is attractive for companies. You put that all together, and it's a compelling argument for why companies, why here, right? Yes, a lot of R&D in the OEM world exists on the coast, but again, when they get to scale their business and are in full productivity and assembly, why not here? We can do it.
What are some of the things that we're seeing right now that are pain points that the state can do a little bit better of a job at? When it comes to growing that additive base, are there areas where we look at it and we say, we can progress a little bit more here versus there? We might need the state's help to start looking at some of these policies. Initially, some things that come to mind, I know when we're, sometimes talking to folks down in Columbus, it's a lot, it's focused a lot on broadband access. It's focused a lot on, we've talked a lot today about workforce training, the work that Josh is doing, and, especially around the state has been tremendous. And some of the other entities that he's working with, assistance for transitioning into a new technology. Those are all things that we've seen as hurdles and barriers to entry for a lot of our members. And I would imagine that is not only the case in Ohio, but around the country. But are those areas that, are there certain areas that we want to see the state maybe progress a little faster, and that we want to be able to say, hey, if we were really going to sit down and develop the governor's additive manufacturing strategy, what are the key components that need to be in there that we're not seeing right now?
Well, I'll take a shot at it because it's embedded in our roadmap. It starts with the fact that we have to do a better job of articulating the business case for broader adoption of 3D printing. So again, we have a working group that's tasked with that. And then it's the talent aspect. Both, and I would highlight that both at the technician level, we need more talent in those roles, but we also need design talent. And there's still a disconnect from our point of view that enough companies are not recognizing the value of design to 3D, and that we need more people capable of to be able to design for 3D. Those are a couple of things that jump out at me.
So I'll piggyback, just reiterate the talent. Really, that has got to be the number one. It is the number one, I think, and something that we have to continue to work on. I won't delve too much into that, but I will say, Andrew, if I could talk about maybe some opportunities. So they're kind of like pain points, but places where I think that this group and others could really look towards this. So advanced air mobility, call them flying cars, call them drones, call them orbs. You say flying cars, you have to do air quotes. Sorry, I forgot mine. That, we talk about, what is the future? And, obviously the Wright brothers home here in Ohio, but as we look to the future, this is where we are in the near-term future. I mean, this is coming fast and furious, and these companies want to build faster. They want to, build more efficiently, more durable. And so additive is going to be key. It is key in that. And one of the things that is we're attracting these companies with our military and federal work that we're doing with Agility Prime, if you all are familiar with it, but which is the Air Force's program to ensure that industry stays in the United States for national security reasons. But as we work with those companies and the Air Force and Wright Pat, and we're doing, ODOT, I got to give a shout out to ODOT and the folks working on Fly Ohio, Drive Ohio. That's all great that they come here to research and develop and test these technologies. But what I want to see, and I'm sure everyone on this call wants to see, is we want to see those folks manufacture here in our state. We want to see those technologies in additive, in manufacturing, develop and grow here, but then we want them to stay here to build, to have their research and development and testing co-located with their manufacturing, to leverage our heritage and all that we have to offer in terms of advanced manufacturing. So I would say advanced air mobility is one where it's an opportunity. And I think we're working pretty hard on that one. And the second one is space. We are, I tell folks the path to the moon and Mars goes through Cleveland, Ohio. You're not going to get there without NASA Glenn Research Center and all the work that's being done there. And as we look to the future, so I see the flying cars as near-term future. Space is the future. We are going to be living, operating there. NASA just reorganized their headquarters. We are fortunate enough to have worked with Jim Free, who's now up at NASA headquarters. We're going to need to build things. We're going to need to use things, create things in space. And I know a lot of folks, are working on those things already. But I think that's a huge opportunity for us as Ohioans is to, Florida has launched, Texas trains astronauts, Alabama builds rockets. But Ohio, we enable, we build and create and enable the life and operations in space. And I would just say that's our future, and that's what we're moving towards.
Andrew, I'd add one other opportunity as Elaine's really summarized tremendously the opportunity around aerospace and space, but I'd also add in healthcare. We are very fortunate here in Northeast Ohio in particular, but across the state, because we have some amazing health systems. And those health systems are leading edge in many ways, starting with the Cleveland Clinic. And we're already engaged with them around, additive manufacturing in the healthcare space. So that I just add that one. We have, we're working on that one pretty vigorously right now.
Sure. So, one of the things I think that we often look to is, this whole notion of how we develop ecosystems around the country, right? And how we develop ecosystems specifically to advance and accelerate additive manufacturing. We're fortunate, we talked a little bit about how we've done that in different areas around the state. Youngstown, we all often look at, right? Because this is our backyard. And Jay, for Team Neo, it's cited. You've mentioned a few of the organizations, right? You have the right recipe, if you will, in terms of you have access to startup funding in terms of the business incubator. You have a research institution which dedicates funding towards additive manufacturing research and development, or the academic side of it. You have access to continuing to drive research and development and federal funding through America Makes. So you have that right recipe, right? You have a workforce that has a tradition in manufacturing and a workforce that's willing to be trained in in what comes next. Are we seeing that around the rest of the state? And how does that right recipe create a competitive advantage for regions around the state to jump into additive and do it successfully?
As Elaine indicated, there is the sector of advanced manufacturing and aerospace, one of the 10 sectors in addition to to hers, and additive manufacturing is a statewide strategy. It's embedded as along with advanced materials and automation, the 3 A's, and so that drumbeat is constantly coming out from Jobs Ohio, and there are affiliates like Team Neo in each part of the state. There's 6 of us across the state. Yeah. So collectively, we're in the individually we're doing our thing in our region, but collectively we're learning from each other. And what's great about the Dayton region, where Elaine is that in her work with the military, if we're learning from that. Here in Northeast Ohio. Likewise, some of the roadmap work, et cetera, we're sharing back with them. So there's best practices being developed across the structure, which is, I think, one of our, secret sauce for Ohio is the Jobs Ohio in its leadership position and strategic development position with the affiliates across the 6 portions of the state.
Yeah. So, Andy, if I could just piggyback on that.
Sure.
Yeah. So absolutely. So in the Dayton region, it's the Dayton Development Coalition is the Team Neo equivalent. And they work very closely with Phil and the Fast Lane team. So our local MEP, there's lots of partnership there. Similar to Jay was talking about, their cluster. We have also focused on the additive manufacturing, advanced manufacturing in our region. But that's going on across the state, as was mentioned. Also want to point out the Lima tank plant producing all of the tanks that our Army folks use. I mean, what a testament to what we do in Ohio. And it happens quietly in Lima, but every tank rolls out of Ohio. So there's a lot of manufacturing being focused on across the state, and that's done with those partnerships, the Jobs Ohio Network partnerships, the MEPs, the organizations such as yours. AFRL has the Materials and Manufacturing Directorate, but it goes beyond just those directorates because it's very cross-cutting, right? There's automotive, there's aerospace, as Jay pointed out very appropriately, the medical field. So it's very cross-cutting, and we do that in partnerships. And I guess if I had to answer your questions succinctly, is yes, Andy, it's happening. And forums like these, I think, give us an opportunity to share that. And so I'm appreciative of this opportunity.
Sure. Well, we've got a couple questions in the, looks like 8 minutes we have left. So let's go there. We've got the first question, which has 2 votes. So we'll just go in order of the number of votes people are given these questions. So what types of suppliers and organizations are needed within your current plans to complement goals and timelines?
What types of suppliers? Well, we can always use more post-processing capability. We've got some. I think we have an end-to-end value chain when it comes to additive manufacturing. But, that's an area that we'd like to see more development in.
Is there anything, and we talked about this a little bit, I don't know if there's anything to add to that in terms of anything that's holding the state back or in terms of something that might need to change?
I'm just going to tell Voltage Valley to keep going. with all of these drones and flying cars, we got to keep pushing that battery technology, the eVTOL, both in the air and then, of course, automotive. So I would say keep pushing hard. I hope that's an official term because I use it all the time. Voltage Valley.
It has been officially coined, I believe. For those of you who don't know, who are not familiar with Voltage Valley, that's in Northeast Ohio, the emergence of the electric vehicle industry, and that's been a tremendous boom for a lot of the manufacturing capabilities in the area. So it's definitely something that we do need to charge, no pun intended, charge forward on. But I think everybody benefits from that. What initiatives or docking points are in place to drive statewide cross-cutting collaboration on these big picture projects? I think we touched on this a little bit as well.
I'll just highlight again, we're working, and I know it's the aerospace and defense strategy for the governor that Joe Zeese talks about, but it absolutely includes additive. So I don't want folks to walk out and say, well, she never talked, it's not an additive manufacturing strategy she's talking about, but it is the aerospace and defense strategy. And from my perspective, we have to continue to, if we as a state we've come together under these pillars and working on them, if we continue to drive towards that, I think we will continue to be successful. So in order to plug into these things, working with, your local Jobs Ohio network partners like Team Neo, what is happening locally there? On a statewide level, we have events that we're, putting on in coordination, with Jobs Ohio, with Joe Zeese and others to get the word out to connect folks. So I would say stay plugged into those things. And Andy, I probably, once the new year comes in, would love to share with you, upcoming statewide events that we're hosting to get people, to get plugged in to getting into that. Yeah.
And I would sum it up as alignment and focus, right? So that's the beauty of the Jobs Ohio model with its 10 sector focus, right? But with the affiliates like Team Neo, we align. That's my job, is to help align on a local basis to each of those 10 sectors. Now, I have sectors that span automotive, aerospace, healthcare, federal military. Additive manufacturing's a core element of every one of those strategies. And so that's how I depict it. It's alignment with across, state, regional, and local. And then, focus on those strategies specific to certain sectors.
Actually, a very good question, especially given the audience here. How can folks get engaged with the state, with your organization, if they're interested? If they're in Ohio, how do they get engaged in some of the initiatives we have going on? If they're outside of Ohio, what's the best way to look at potentially coming to the state and doing business with the state?
Any door will get you there. So what I mean by that is Elaine, Karthik, who's on the call, my colleague, Eric Fitzpatrick's on the call. I know Kirk Rogers is in the audience here. He's involved in our cluster initiative. I mean, so my point would be, if companies are interested in getting involved in Northeast Ohio's cluster effort, they can contact myself or just America Makes or anyone else along the line. If they're looking to get involved statewide, I can help you get there. But also, you could just call Elaine or Karthik, who's also on the call. So any door will get you there.
Any closing remarks in the 2 minutes left?
We're having fun. And, Team Neo's role here largely is we have a strong research group, and they help drive that methodology to create the roadmap, et cetera. We serve as the convener, but this progress that we've been making would not be possible without a variety, the diversity of participation, right? We've got America Makes at the table. We've got the universities and 4-year and 2-year. We've got, the companies, the industry, the big ones and the small and medium-sized companies. And we've got solution providers, service providers, et cetera. So I think when people come together, you get that coalition of the willing. That's where things start to happen. And, you can get your region or your state or even your own company leaning in, right?
Yep.
So.
Well, I go ahead, Elaine, please.
I was just going to say, keep working. This team is amazing, and I'm proud to be a part of it. And however I can help, let me know. Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate both of your time today. Hopefully, everybody got a good taste of what's going on in Ohio and some potential strategies. So we'll circle back in a couple of years when we have flying cars, and we'll talk about how that contributes to that.
It'll be sooner than that, Andy.
There you go.
Good deal. Well, thank you both. Appreciate your time. You guys are fantastic team members, and really exciting what's going on in the state. So appreciate you guys taking the time to give a little bit of an update to us. So